There are 86 pieces of Lego for every person on the planet. Somehow a tiny plastic brick has become part of all our childhoods.
It's the ultimate toy, isn't it? Because it doesn't have any rules. And what Legos allows you to do is dip into a big bucket of mess and pull out these bricks and slowly make something which is uniquely yours.
I made a police station. It's a house on wheels.
That's good.
With wings.
We spend nearly £3 billion a year on Lego, and now it's expanding its empire into Hollywood.
Good morning, apartment. Ready to start the day. And always be sure to keep the soap out of your eye.
Lego might be an enormous, branded, ubiquitous toy, but it also has a strong relationship with the real buildings all around us. It is, after all, a brick.
What actually goes on when you play with Lego? You take a spatial unit and you add it to another, and there's a bigger space being built. You remember how you did it, and you remember how that brick felt on your finger.
Toys like Lego help us play at being architects. Most of us lose that ability, but some people keep it, and they haven't stopped building.
I wouldn't be able to imagine my childhood without Lego.
And the toys they played with as children have helped inspire some of the most important buildings of our time.
Lego's not just a kid's toy. I think there's a direct connection between Lego and the real worlds, the buildings we create all around us. I think that Lego has changed the way we think about architecture.
Lego can transport you anywhere your imagination can take you. So I've come to Billund in Denmark. Population 6,000, it's home to Legoland, Denmark's largest tourist attraction outside Copenhagen. Only problem is, it's closed in winter. But I'm here to see something much more exciting.
I've played with Lego since I was about 2 or 3 years old. It's a complete dream come true to come to a Lego factory.
In 2019 there will be more minifigures in the world than there actually are people.
You're joking.
No, I'm not joking.
It's a bit like a maternity ward.
Yeah.
Lego produces 45 billion pieces a year. That's 1,450 every second.
I think I might stick to architecture.
Through Lego, we realise robots and Star Wars, spaceships and helicopters. But at the root of all these creations is a simple brick. And that's no accident. Lego's beginnings are steeped in building. The story of Lego begins here, at this house in Billund, built in 1924. It was a creation of a local carpenter called Ole Kirk Christiansen, who from humble beginnings would establish the mighty Lego empire.
He loved to play. You could walk by outside and you would probably get a bucket of water in your head. But that was how he was, so they had a lot of water fights. He was really, really a great man, and he loved children.
And in England we say we have a big character. He sounds like a really big character.
Yeah.
And here he is a few years later.
Yeah.
He's a bit plumper.
Yeah, he is.
Married, 3 kids, wife. Doing very well for himself.
Yeah.
By the 1920s, Ole was Billund's carpenter of choice, crafting barns and furniture for the farming community. But he didn't stop at wood. His lofty ambition included the brick.
These are some of the buildings he made. This is a farm.
Right.
This is from 1921, right?
We're talking real buildings.
We're talking real buildings, yeah.
God, it's amazing to see them, where it all began.
So everything was looking great. Would probably have ended up being a carpenter for the rest of life. But then things started going not so well.
In 1932, tragedy struck. Ole's wife died in childbirth, leaving him as a widower with 4 children. When the Great Depression spread across Europe, Ole and his neighbours were facing ruin.
1932 started to become a crisis, and he had no income. He couldn't even get the money the farmers owed him because they had none.
The farmers no longer wanted barns or houses, so Ola decided to make smaller goods that they could afford.
I mean, these are the kind of toys that he was making. It's quite...
Robust.
Yeah. They are, they sturdy.
It is.
They've got character. I like the little...
Yeah.
Little eyes at the front
but
here.
These are some of the first ones. Of course, he was pretty much experimenting at that time, trying something new.
In 1934, Ola Kurt Christiansen named his new business Lego, after the Danish leg godt, to play well. He was convinced the business had a future, but his brothers thought otherwise.
They didn't like it. They actually encouraged him to give up the toy business because they didn't think it was a serious business with a future. But they were wrong, you could say.
From the 1930s, toys were becoming serious business.
Pre-war, a lot of the most influential philosophers and early years educators had come to the conclusion that children learn through play. They learn through their hands, and the hand is an extension of the brain. The idea of play and developing toys which encourage a certain kind of good play, if you like, learning through play, became very much the currency of the age.
During the Nazi occupation of Denmark, anxious parents bought Ola's wooden toys to cheer up their children. But wood was needed for fuel, and Denmark was running out. So in 1946, Ola bought a new bit of kit, a plastic moulding machine.
You push that, you push really hard, and you just keep it there.
So this would have been cutting-edge technology in 1946?
Yeah, it was.
He started off making toy teddy bears, but he knew the machine could do more.
Little boxes on the hillside.
Ola and his team spent the next decade researching, developing and experimenting with plastic toys.
Little boxes all the same.
The brick they created chimed powerfully with the new mood of the age.
And a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky.
In the aftermath of World War II, the thinkers of Europe were on a quest to rebuild their shattered communities. And the figure of the child was key.
So many toys are about destruction, and Lego is about construction. So it seems to be about learning how to be a good person by building, by creating a better world.
I love that idea. In the 1950s, when cities all over Europe were rebuilding themselves, and town planning was a big subject. I love the fact that Lego, the first thing it does is a town plan.
We needed engineers and we needed architects. How do you get engineers and architects? Well, you show them buildings and you encourage them to construct those buildings with building blocks.
There's a long tradition of architects seeking out construction toys as children. In the 1870s, a young boy called Francis played with these Froebel's blocks. This early play sparked a passion for structure, space and form, and was a powerful outlet for creative exploration.
That boy grew up to build buildings like these. The great American architect Frank Lloyd Wright blew away Victorian stuffy conventional architecture with his radical asymmetric compositions which he said were heavily influenced by Froebel's blocks. In fact, he continued to use the blocks when he was a grown-up architect.
And he wasn't alone. The abstract blocks inspired Le Corbusier and Walter Gropius, the founders of modernism. The architecture they pioneered in the 1920s was stripped down and unadorned, but full of idealistic intention. They believed in an equal and humane society with affordable, well-designed housing for all. And the post-war years gave them and their followers the chance to realise their dream through a radical innovation: the prefab. Flat-pack or system-built housing, mass-produced in the factory and assembled on site, it was a low-cost vision of utopia. But by the 1970s, these ubiquitous, often austere towers were proving unpopular. People were desperate for fresh ideas.
You could see in the center of every city there were glass blocks. The boring box was a phrase. It failed in terms of taste because it didn't have enough variety.
Two schools of architecture began to emerge that challenged the post-war earnest modernist blocks. One is embodied by Lego, the other by that other great construction toy of the 20th century, Meccano.
Mechanics made easy, Meccano in the 1960s was Britain's most popular construction toy. Lego's popularity was growing, but it couldn't yet match Meccano's might. Children everywhere saved up their pocket money to buy it.
I fell to it like a duck to water. One of the reasons I became an architect, I'm sure, because I'd spent a lot of time playing with something which you could physically create things with. My partner Richard Rogers played Meccano as a child, and the processes which Meccano illustrated at the time are still endemic in our building.
Through the spirit of Meccano, architects like Richard Rogers and Mike Davies brought to life an idea everyone else wanted buried, the prefab. They look very different, but like the modernist blocks of the 50s, these buildings were made in a factory.
Pompidou is the classic example. It's the kit building. It's made of pieces, just like Meccano. It's essentially a giant Meccano.
Quick to build and assemble, like Pompidou, the Lloyd's building was produced in a factory and brought to site on the back of a lorry.
When I was a kid, this was the building that really turned me on to architecture. I'd never seen anything like it. Britain had never seen anything like it. I mean, just look at it.
This is architecture made through science and engineering. And rather than hide that away, Richard Rogers celebrated it, putting the services on the outside. The result is a building that's in the high-pressure heart of the city, but doesn't feel that way.
Inside, you get this incredible sense of space, these vast open floors, which in the mid-80s were incredibly modern, incredibly radical in the stuffy old world of the city. They call this kind of architecture high-tech, engineering embodied in the architecture and infused with the spirit of Meccano.
Well, Meccano is a technological toy, so in that sense, the thing that's interesting about Meccano and about a lot of the architecture of what's called high-tech is it's actually understandable. You can understand how it's made, there's no mystery. And that's the aesthetic of the building.
By 1978, the year the Lloyd's building was commissioned, Meccano was no longer the world's most popular construction toy. Lego was simpler, safer, and appealed to much younger children and those who weren't very good with a spanner, like me. And that very same year, a new school of architecture began to emerge. It had a strong sense of the building block, but not the bare concrete slabs of the 60s. These new buildings were fun.
People were looking for a more playful, accessible, communicative architecture. Postmodernists brought back colour and metaphor.
Postmodernist architects may not have intentionally tried to make their buildings look like Lego, but effectively they were doing the same things, reducing buildings to a language that everyone could understand, made up of circles, cylinders, squares and triangles, and creating great architecture from it.
Number One Poultry was created by one of the key figures in postmodern architecture, James Stirling.
Jim was always wanted to be different. And if the world had caught up to him, he'd go on somewhere else. He must have thought about Lego when he was building, because they're put together like toy blocks. They're very volumetric, and in that sense, he was both a classicist and a Legoist, if you like.
But by the time Stirling's Number One Poultry was completed in 1997, postmodernism was a dirty word.
Too many bad postmodern buildings were run up quickly, and it suffered because things are copied to death and ripped off and prostituted and watered down. So postmodernism went down.
Although postmodernism fell from favour, Lego's influence on architects remained. In the 1970s, as plastic bricks dominated the world's playrooms and toy shops, a new breed of architects was born. And its rising star has started to build.
Isn't that great? Sound fantastic.
A pile of potential.
Exactly.
At 39 years old, Bjarke Ingels is the leading architect of his generation and a huge Lego fan.
I wouldn't be able to imagine my childhood without Lego, because it's such an integrated part of it.
So what would you build when you were a kid?
It was very much these James Bond villains' lairs. It's always something with secret revolving doors or sliding walls.
Yeah.
I was very much into this idea that the architecture could somehow contain sort of unseen possibilities. That things seem to be a certain way, but then they could actually do so much more.
Bjarke's childhood vision has influenced his architecture today. Where others see problems, Bjarke sees potential. He's won prestigious commissions all over the world. He's constructing a waste incinerator that powers a ski slope. Designed an entirely carbon-neutral island in the Caspian Sea. And he'll soon be turning a pile of bricks into the Lego House, the corporation's new museum and HQ in Billund. It's his dream commission, and it might inspire generations of children to see Lego as more than a toy.
Lego is really like the simplest and most blatant way to actually turn an idea into action. You don't need, tools or knives, or like even glue. It's a bit like grabbing a pencil and just drawing away on paper.
It's immediate. You've got it.
Yeah, it's a three-dimensional sketch tool.
Yeah.
And he used this three-dimensional sketch tool to find a modern solution to a familiar problem. How to make imaginative buildings from prefab blocks.
Our labor wages are so high and our weather is so wet. You actually want to minimize the time spent on the construction site. You want to arrive with a lot of pre-assembled elements and put them together really quickly. So in effect, over the last 50, 60 years, Denmark has become a country entirely built out of Lego, or at least prefabricated modules. But if people are all different, then why do suddenly all buildings look the same?
Denmark's towers of today provoke boredom, but the towers from its past provoke wonder. Inspired by Copenhagen's spires of old, Bjarke was determined to create a tower block every bit as fantastical, playful and fun. But could he build it within the restrictions of Danish construction, using cheap prefab building blocks that all look the same? Bjarke turned to the bricks of his childhood to propose an idea for a modern high-rise that is as inventive as it is radical.
These are almost conceived as individual Lego blocks.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You can pre-assemble everything at home, and then you just put the blocks together when you arrive at the site.
From a factory-made kit of identical modules, Bjarke has created not a rigid vertical skyscraper, but a lush man-made landscape of valleys and mountains.
It's a crazy project. A lot of architects, they can be quite po-faced and serious, and that's why they build serious boxes. Did it inspire people?
Yeah, but I think it really made people look at architecture in a completely different way. In architecture, whenever you have a chance to intervene, you should try to realize the city that you really dream about living in. Because, it doesn't have to be like it is. Our cities are only the way they are because that's how far we've gotten. And that's what Lego enables anyone to do, is just to put together in a very simple way a lot of almost identical bricks to create what a city can be and what a city should be.
Your own city might not be that great, but on the living room floor, you can actually rearrange things and make the world as it should be. And I think the important thing behind Lego is that it's a better world, that it's a chance to improve on the world as it is now. So it's a chance to be idealistic.
Utopian ideals, childlike dreams of the future. Through the innocence of play, we tap into our visions of remaking the world anew. For the artist Olafur Elliasson, play is full of powerful possibility.
What actually goes on when you play with Lego, right? It's a very interesting. You take a spatial unit, right? And then you kind of compose it, almost like like a score. You compose it together and you add it to another, and there's a bigger space being built. You're not a consumer, you're a producer.
Olafur Elliasson turns the public into protagonist of a collective work of art. At the weather project at Tate's Turbine Hall, onlookers became part of his giant installation. In 2005, he travelled to Albania and used play to bring people together as they built a new city from scratch. After 50 years of communism, the transition from dictatorship to democracy looked uncertain. For the Collectivity project, Elliasson took 3 tons of white Lego and dumped them in the town square of Tirana, Albania's capital city.
I thought of this table experiment as a way of creating almost like a little parliament, where people kind of on the street would negotiate with each other.
In Albania, the idea of open political debate was new, and so was Lego.
Lego had not had a life in Albania. And for a lot of people, it was like, wow, look at this, isn't this plastic interesting? What is it called and what does it do?
People were invited to rebuild Tirana with Lego.
What does it mean to share space? And what does it mean to co-produce space? And suddenly you're standing next to somebody that you might not know, and then you see, oh, the person's building something, and can I add something to that, or can I at least build something next to it? Are we building a city together?
To Olafur, this Lego city had radical potential.
In Tirana, I do certainly think it added elements to a discussion which was already going on, and trying to develop a set of values which would reflect where the country is going. The fact that you can look upon your own city in which you are as a model. If you start to look at reality as a model, it is much more likely to be negotiable. And if it's negotiable, it can change.
To Olafur, Lego is a blank canvas of simple white bricks. But for most of us, there's a lot more on offer, even a controversial pink-coloured range, especially for girls. The Lego of today is available in 9,000 different colours, shapes and sizes.
Quite incredible. Look at that, the bags within bags with these kind of incredibly complicated, intricate little things, little rings, and God only knows what that is. It's called a whip or something like that.
It started as these simple bricks, and you can still get these simple bricks, but it's become less like this creative freedom and more born by like a jigsaw puzzle.
Do you know what fills my heart with absolute fear? That. Look at that. When I was a kid, you had a limited range of options. You had to use your imagination and think outside the box. Now it's got all so complicated and branded. It's drifted far from its original ideals.
I think that the Lego Corporation is deeply divided as to what it's trying to do, and it's heavily compromised by its commercial ambitions. In recent years, it's become a corporation that's really ripping off the imagination of children by selling them ready-made nonsense from films.
Rest in pieces. In fact, the new Lego movie out this week tackles this very issue of directed versus free creative play, settling on the idea that it takes all sorts to be a Lego enthusiast.
Relax, everybody, I'm here. Batman!
And of course, once you've watched it, you can buy the Lego movie kit and recreate it at home. Yet our simple desire to build from only blocks and imagination hasn't gone away. And it's the digital world that's picking up where plastic bricks left off. Paving the way is the video game Minecraft.
This is forwards.
So W is forward.
W is forward. And U to place a block.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing there?
What I'm doing is making the shelter.
Never have I felt more old than I'm feeling now.
Minecraft is a virtual world where players build their own creations with 3D blocks. With more than 42 million users, it's a huge global phenomenon.
Minecraft is the digital equivalent of Lego. It's not the reinvention of Lego, it's the spirit of what Lego is. Lego is about building a building. Minecraft is about building a world, building an environment that me and my friends can go around.
And everything's sort of cubey.
Everything's pixelated.
Oh, right, okay, yes. Oh, look, yeah. Oh, I get it now, I'm getting it.
As soon as you go into the world and you put down one block, you realise, oh, I get it, I can put these blocks down. And that's where it takes you on a journey of creativity.
It's not like, oh, do this, do that. It's, do you want to do this because you can? If you're thinking, I want to make a massive castle, you can. You just have to have the resources.
So there are no limits to it?
There are no limits to what you can do.
Through the internet, huge groups of players can join forces and build things together. Any number of people can join in.
How many of your friends play this?
A lot. Basically, everyone in Arno's class, I'm sure, has played it.
Yeah?
Yep. Everyone in my class probably as well. It kind of socializes the game.
Yeah.
When people come together and creating one thing, just some amazing things start happening.
The scale of Minecraft is epic, but its worlds aren't limited to fantasy. Architects and town planners are using this building block game to transform our cities into places we actually want to live in. This is my old neighbourhood in East London. There's definitely room for improvement, but how do you make yourself heard?
I wouldn't want to walk down there at midnight on my own.
Through Minecraft, we'll all be able to make our cities safer, cleaner and smarter.
So Benny here, we're going to have a drift through the neighbourhood. Absolutely. Let's set off.
My old stomping ground has been transformed into a 3D model, thanks to Professor Benahir Majdoub. Through the model, I can make virtual improvements, and local city councillors will be able to see them.
There's a bit of a dark area here, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes. The bridge.
You could maybe improve the environment here.
I think the best way is to put some lighting.
With proper flames. I'd like to see that in architecture. Some proper flames like in the Roman times.
Yes.
So now it's feeling maybe a little brighter. If you're wandering down there on your own, you might not be quite as nervous.
You will
maybe
feel safer, certainly, with a better lighting system. Yeah. And you can see how easy it is to use. It's 2 clicks.
So ordinary people can interact with this.
Absolutely.
Right.
A child can model few blocks, build up a house, etc. You can access to the project while sitting at home, and that will certainly foster participation from the community and give much more power to the neighborhood.
Through Minecraft, an entire community can team up online and redesign their neighbourhood en masse. It's been tested in Stockholm with the project Blockhome. And the UN have used it with young people in Kenya to regenerate urban areas in desperate need of restructuring.
Minecraft just enables people to think about the ecosystem of things, and that's going to be fascinating how that evolves. I have no doubt that the architects of tomorrow will have played Minecraft as children. Absolutely no doubt.
Who knows what kind of architects, what kind of buildings the construction toys of the future will produce. But for me, there's something so inspirational about holding a simple block in the palm of your hand.
You know, no developer would ever pay for that because there's only room for the elevator.
This was supposed to be a camera, like a kind of a viewpoint, to look into the future.
And this is Tom at the end of the Lego rainbow.